All right, everyone. Thanks for coming to this very special edition. And if you haven't noticed, they're all special editions of Huddle. Welcome, Will. Will's making his triumphant return after a long hiatus. Will did tell me, he goes, I've got the most thrilling things to say today. I can't even express how thrilling and excited I am to say all those things. Will will get his time to shine and spill this knowledge onto us. So anyway, we're going to get going. And if y'all haven't noticed the pattern, when issues come up in our company, we try to talk about them multiple times in multiple venues to multiple groups of people to try to get the point across. This time will be no different. We're going to talk about unrepresented buyers. I think we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive here from the perspective of the listing agent because I think it does appear to me, and correct me if you're not seeing the same thing, or if you are brokers out there. It does seem to be becoming slightly more prevalent. Not some massive issue, but it does seem to be more prevalent. My guess would be that the consumers' access to tools to guide them, aka AI chatbots, are giving them the confidence to start this endeavor. And that was my initial thought. And I said, well, I'm going to test this theory and I'm going to actually ask my favorite chatbot and pose the question. And the question I posed was pretty simple, like, hey, I'm about to write an offer on a house and I want to be unrepresented. Should I do this? I want to save money on the commission and, maybe lower the price or whatever. Anyway, that's basically the idea that I presented it. And the chatbot came back to me and said, as a real estate broker, you should know this is a bad idea. And I was like, come on, man. Come on, man.
What
And then I
what
had
one?
and and then I it sort of ruined the experiment immediately. And then I told it, okay, well, why don't you answer the question as if I was just a consumer, looking for some advice here. And it kind of gave me the same answer. So it kind of ruined my experience. But I then forced it to say, I said, well, I'm doing this anyway. What should I do here? Uh, and the strategy was clever. I mean, that's what they should do, and pretty straightforward. But you can see how I guarantee you there's chatbots out there that they have the context of me, because I've created gems full of all sorts of, state law and all sorts of stuff. So it knows, the one I use knows what I do for a living because, I've been asking it all sorts of questions. Uh, but a random chatbot out there would definitely give some advice and direction on how to approach a listing agent as an unrepresented buyer. Um, let's talk a minute. Let's talk about how we handle that. And as always, I would encourage everyone to unmute themselves, contribute in any way, shape, or form. And if you think what I'm saying is a bit silly, feel free to correct me. Happy to hear it. First and foremost, I think that as with everything that goes on in our business, I think we should at least have some preparation before the transaction begins of, hey, seller, there's all sorts of things that maybe you should anticipate and consider. One of those things is an unrepresented buyer. And then, maybe we could go on a monologue there about how we would normally handle that situation, your recommendations, as well as the options that are available to them. I think we should have, some level of discussion there. But when the time comes, that'll be the moment in which we actually have to handle the situation, obviously. So uh, let's say we get an offer or we get a phone call. Well, actually, let me pose this to the group. How are you usually first learning about the potential of an unrepresented buyer making an offer? Are they actually calling you and, like an agent might, and say, hey, I'm writing up an offer. I'm about to present it. I got some questions for you. Are you receiving it mostly unsolicited? They walk through on a Tuesday and then it's Friday afternoon, of course, it's 6 o'clock at night and you're getting ready to enjoy yourself. And they sense that through the universe that you are about to enjoy yourself and decided to write an offer. How are you receiving that? Anybody have any experience with this? Kimmy says, I typically get them at open houses, and then they call and let them know that they're going to write the offer. I think this is a really good time. Your first interaction, your first interaction with a potential unrepresented buyer is probably the right time to start asking the appropriate questions. And the appropriate questions to me might I think when you get this call, the appropriate question should be very pointed and very nosy. And you should approach it from, I'm the most curious person in the world. Why on earth would you be making an offer on this house, as opposed to, we're so excited to receive this offer? Kimmy says, Jacob taught me to ask, which realtor are you working with? So the assumptive close there. I like that strategy. We just make the assumption that they're already working with somebody. It does cut a little bit maybe on their side and forces them to reveal that they are in fact going to write this offer unrepresented. I think when you learn about their intention to be unrepresented, I think that's when we should sort of dive into the obvious, which are first is financing, right? Because I don't know that, if another agent calls us, we make assumptions about their buyer. And, because another agent wouldn't give us a buyer who's not pre-qualified, right? Not pre-approved in any way, shape, or form, and they're just sort of approaching us, and we'll handle it on the back end. We have the expectation that they've got their financial ducks in a row. We should definitely not take that assumption here. And so when we talk about their financing, I think the questions are pretty simple. Have you talked to a lender? What did the lender say? Are you pre-qualified or are you pre-approved? Do you understand the difference between the two? Great, great. So you do have the letter. Where are your funds coming from? Now I know that may be a question that you get into eventually with maybe another agent, but because this is an unrepresented buyer who's sort of doing this on their own, these are the things that you should absolutely be asking. Um, Even to the extent, I think you should maybe take your cues from the lender, like where are these funds coming from, and how did you come about this amount of money? Um, and that may sound a little too nosy. Maybe it is, but I think it's an okay question to ask. And the reason I think you should be asking these questions is because it really does test the ability and the knowledge of the person that you're about to work with. And because it will give you, if they answer these questions with ease and they seem like they've been here before, I think that should say something about what you're about to get yourself into. So definitely ask those questions. Other questions I think you should be asking, um, tell me about your inspection process. What do you plan to do for inspections? I'm assuming you're going to ask for a due diligence period. Is that correct? And I think we should be asking this because, we should be aware if they're going to hire a professional inspector, if they're going to do this inspection on their own, we should have some perspective on that. Uh, I wouldn't give them guidance in this scenario, but we should at least understand what's going on. Um, let's see what else. Uh, how are we handling this anyway? I do know that, once we receive this offer, well, hopefully all of us are sending over the unrepresented buyer disclosure. I would hope. What are we going to do if they don't sign it? What are we going to do if we send over an unrepresented buyer disclosure and they just decide that we're not signing documents because we don't have to, and I'm nervous about it because I don't want to read it? What say you? What power do we have here? Do we have any power? Do we just accept that they're not going to sign it and move on? Well, in my opinion, we don't have to just simply accept that they're not going to sign it. I think it's actually a pretty important step. And the bare minimum is that we send it to them. We email this document and we have a conversation that, hey, you need to review this document and sign it, please. But if we have the backing of our seller, Think about this. If we have the backing of our seller, the seller is aware that we have this disclosure and why it's important to the transaction. The seller can impose the rule, I'm not responding to offers unless they sign the unrepresented buyer disclosure. And if we have that at our direction, I think we'll get that document signed. So remember that that is a strategy. You don't have to do that. That might be, in some situations slightly pushy, maybe going overboard to say we're not going to review offers unless you sign this document. But it's a tool. It's a tool that you could consider using in certain scenarios. So remember that we can get our backing for a lot of this from and direction for a lot of this stuff from our seller. Um, let's talk about boundaries as well. Because I do believe that it's really easy um, to you know step over our own boundaries and our representation here. And I do believe if I'm going to call on somebody right now, I think Will would be a good person to talk about boundaries because Will's speech on this and boundaries with unrepresented buyers is really good. So, Will, are you prepared to?
You bet. So I could give you a list, guys. We educate unrepresented buyers, but we do not negotiate for them. So we have a duty to explain, but we don't have a duty to advocate for them or be an advocate for them or advocate for them. So think about the difference in those two words. So we have a duty to explain, but not to be an advocate. Our advocate would be fiduciary duties to a client. This is a customer. Think of your unrepresented buyer disclosure with the three fundamental principles of honesty, fair dealing, and good faith. That's what you owe a customer. Also, layer on top the duty to your seller to sell the property. So answer their questions with a smile and positivity. They want to buy it. That's great. When they want to see it, schedule an appointment to show it to them. It's easy. Because remember, we started this conversation with our seller when we took the listing and we talked about our duties under the unrepresented buyer. And I've kind of made a list just off the top of my head of what that job is. So think about duties to customer, also the job of working with a customer. Remember, we pay other agents to do the job of working with a buyer, right? There's a job there. And remember, with the law, NAR lawsuits, we refuse as an industry to just do the job of representing or handling an unrepresented buyer with no cost associated to it. We refuse to do that. That's why we have a fee in our listing agreement for the unrepresented buyer. Really quickly, you should know exactly what that is. Well, first of all, I'm going to show the property. I'm going to schedule the showing, show it. I'm going to give them information about it. I'm going to send it. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to answer questions about it. I may send them plats, photos, videos, additional information that I may have about the property. I'm going to answer all the questions about the property. Okay, I'm going to educate them on questions about how to proceed. Like they say, what's next step? Next step, really good question. Why don't we get with your lender? Who's your lender? Next step, okay, after lender. Looks good. Sounds like you look, let's say green light from the lender. Awesome. Earnest money, right offer. How do we do that? Let's talk about it. Remember, educate, but don't represent. And then, yeah, we're going to talk about inspections because it's going to come up to Section 8. We're going to talk about due diligence and their right to have a contingency. Remember, we're going to be really just asking them what they would like their offer to be, and we're going to present it. So they're going to say, well, what do you think it's worth, Mike? So how much should we offer? What do you think it's worth? What do you
Well,
think a good answer a seller agent would say to an unrepresented buyer when the unrepresented buyer says, how much do you think we should offer?
I think the answer to this should be painfully obvious. I hope it is.
Right? It
I
should
hope
be
it.
it should be make any offer you want. I'd be happy to present it. But if you want to ask me what it's worth, it's listed for 1.2 million. But what is it worth? It's not relevant, my opinion of what it's worth. It's only relevant what you think it's worth. Make an offer on what you would like and I'll present it. Okay? But do you think it's worth 1.2 million? Again, not relevant. The seller has to sign off on an offer. They're going to sell it for 1.2 million. That's the listing price. Well, I don't think it's worth 1.2 million. I think it's not even worth a million. I only want, I'm going to offer 980. You can offer whatever you like, and I am under an obligation to present it. So don't get caught up into this temptation to represent a buyer, pull comparables, negotiate on their behalf. You're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. And a
Well,
reminder, remember on our, okay, go ahead, Mike, if you want to stop
well,
right there. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just going to ask you just real quickly, um, what is the harm in just saying, I think it's worth the list price?
Hmm. Well, if your opinion of value, you pulled comparables and you're pretty strong, you got your handle. Say, look, I'll send you four comparables we use to set the list price with the seller. Here they are. No problem. As long as they justify the list price or higher.
Yeah.
You have, again, this is a customer, guys, not a buyer you represent.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
the only reason I asked that question was because, there's sometimes there's a fine line between, giving advice and then really advocating for your seller, giving advice to an unrepresented person. And
Yep.
so, yeah,
Yep.
if you're going to talk about pricing, we completely do it from the perspective of the seller and just say, yeah, it's totally worth this. You should totally buy it for this amount of money. And here's the reason why I priced it that way. And everything that you say better be in 100% agreement with what your seller's wishes are. So,
Totally agree.
yeah,
Can I turn the channel?
please do.
Okay, so let's look at this from the lens of how you write an offer. I brought this up in Zoom. I asked Park City in their in-person meeting. I stood up and said, "How many of you have received an offer from an unrepresented buyer?" And no hands went up. And that room was packed, you guys. I bet we had 100 agents in that sales meeting in Park City, and not one hand went up. All right, so this is more of a Wasatch Front, the rest of the state problem. And every week for the last 6 to 8 weeks, we have unrepresented buyers who are sending offers to agents. One was a chat GPT offer that was just like they, kind of did what Mike said, but they took it a step further and said, I want to write an offer, prepare an offer to purchase on the following property at this address with these terms. And out comes this contract. Okay. And then it gets sent to our listing agent. The other one was a Rep C with an addendum of subject to the closing of buyer's property. So the state of Utah Rep C can be used by the public. It's Attorney General. The clauses are all trademarked realtor. The only way someone can lawfully use a clause created by the UAR is with the permission of a realtor or through a realtor. Now, granted, a realtor could just give it to them. That they could just email it to them. They could do that. And if that happened, well, they did. And that's okay. But it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? So that whole library of forms is trademarked to realtors. It's just they're not able to really just use that. Why not? Well, because they're not going to understand it. I think that's really the protection for the public is they've got to understand it. With dealing with a customer buyer, your duty is to educate them. It is just not to represent them. Okay. So with all of that, we rewrote the Chat GPT offer on a Rep C, no problem. And the commission in 4.3E is zero. Make sure everybody understands that it's zero. And then when we go to the other offer that was sent, we basically our agent, seller agent only, right, writes a counter and cleans up the offer. And so off we were running. Fortunately, in both cases, our listing agents did a really good job of talking to the seller about the section in the listing agreement, an unrepresented purchaser, and building the value of the job that must be done. Again, the job must be done in working with a customer. Typically, that's another agent. We pay another agent to do that job. If it's going to be me, this is what that job looks like, and this is what the fee is. So as long as we get that right, I think in the listing agreement and we understand it from up front, I think most of our battle is won already. Because if somebody wants to buy the house and they think they're saving money by being a customer buyer, well, let them think that. I mean, we don't represent them. They're a customer who wants to buy it. They want to see it, show it to them. They need answers about the property, answer them for them. Do it optimistically. Do it positively. Don't treat them like they're a disease to be avoided. They want to buy your listing. Let's help them do it. And they want to buy it. Let's make it happen. Um, yeah. So I've got another thought, but I'll save that for later. But that's kind of my take, Mike.
Yeah, I really like your monologue on this subject, Will. Yeah, the other things too, and by the way, this is none of this is really new. Um, this is just a slightly new take on it, because there's always go on motion light, turn on. There's always been, the seminars or the things that go around to teach people how to buy real estate and how they save money and so for a while they might all take on a certain feel or look or whatever. And this is the new iteration of this is, the advice from AI. And it's a couple of easy things to remember about this too. If somebody really wants to negotiate, the some of the real easy stuff, because this used to happen, a lot of these unrepresented buyers used to make claims to, well, the real estate commission, and so because I'm not doing it, I'm doing this with it and I'm doing that with it. Remember, the easiest response is only licensed real estate people can make claims to real estate commissions. And it's just that simple. And our rep C handles it really well now. So maybe those types of statements are going away. um, but yeah, I do like where Will is going with this, and this is just another good reminder of why you should absolutely not ignore those two spaces on the Rep C for unrepresented buyers and limited agents, because that just handles the problem so easily, handles it up front, and nobody's left off guard, and you're not negotiating it at the moment of impact, which is a bad time to negotiate it. So
So, hey,
I'd
Mike,
yeah,
I got a reminder that I got to get on a call soon. Can I share one other perspective and then I'll let you guys continue on?
please.
For those who remember real estate prior to NAR settlement, remember we had the commission on the MLS, remember?
Mhm.
And then then we made it public, right? So now the buyer, these people who go to these seminars, as Mike was talking about, want to save money. They see the 3%, they know it's available to this other agent. They don't want another agent. And so they'll come to the listing agent and say, either A, I want to represent myself or something like that. Okay. Um, that world was actually harder for us. They remember they would make this pitch for the commission that they wanted to be paid the commission because they represented themselves. And remember, we had attorneys even who said, I want the commission. In the old world, the commission could only be payable to who? See, in the new world, it's buyer broker agreement. If you don't have one, you don't get paid, period. Right? Old world, it was if you were the procuring cause. Remember this? Like if you showed it, you took the earnest money, wrote the offer, someone else swooped in there, someone who did that job got paid. Today, that doesn't exist. We could only pay someone who's a member of the board of realtors in which the MLS was associated with. So if you're not a member, you don't get paid. Like if you go down to St. George and sell a property and there's a 3%, you don't get paid. Right? So remember all that? And you had to
Oh
have
yeah.
an active license. So what about an attorney, Will? Well, the attorney, if they have an active license and they're a member of the board of realtors and the MLS, then yes, they could get paid if they were procuring cause. Old world. New world. We go with the seller. We say, seller, here's the job that needs to be done. This is what we charge for it in order to get started in marketing your property. These are the terms of our listing agreement. We sign it. We move forward. Done. Done. New buyer. This buyer comes forward unrepresented. The rep C says zero. There's nothing on the MLS that says what the commission is. So the optics of this are the old optics were 3%. The new optics are zero. You guys get that? What would you rather have? The old world under this scenario, what would you rather have? I mean, the old optics is it's screaming, look at this money, 3%, whatever it is, 2.5%, whatever it is. And these people want they want it, right? New world, no one knows what the commission is. The terms of the listing agreement are confidential between broker and listing agent. That's confidential, and seller. I mean, broker and seller, it's confidential. We don't share the terms of our listing agreement with a buyer. So new world, no one knows what it is. And if they ask, it's confidential. The seller pays me. It's confidential. Are you getting paid to represent? Well, of course I'm getting paid. I have a job to do to help you. I'm getting paid. Write whatever offer you want. Well, what are we putting in this section here that says 4.3, this commission right here? We put zero. Oh, okay. Now all of a sudden they feel better, right? Remember that section of the rep sheet is in addition to what you already have agreed to in your listing agreement. In addition to, and I think the new world is a lot better, guys. It's just a lot better for these customer unrepresented buyers. Also, one other thing is this is a lot. This goes on all the time where we have customer buyers in new construction where there's a model home all the time. Matter of fact, I asked well, went to a funeral of a lifetime friend, found out that my friend's daughter works for a home builder, and we got reminiscing, and I just happened to ask her. I said, "Do you mind me asking how many of the buyers do you have in a month, let's say, are ones without agents? How many would you think?" It's the majority. It's 70 to 80% don't have an agent. They're just customer
Woo!
buyers walking in. They're just customer buyers. This happens all the time. All right. Fair dealing, honesty, good faith. That's the state's requirements. Then we layer on the unrepresented disclosure. We have a custom version of that. Berkshire Hathaway makes you pay attention to what it says on the back about what you can do and what you cannot do, what you will not be doing. You will not be pulling comparables. You will not be doing an analysis of price unless it's to justify the price you already have. You're not going to be pulling complementary clauses that would weaken your seller, and you may not remind them of deadlines, like in which the earnest money is due. Okay. Now, educate them on your earnest money is non-refundable on this day. You need to know that. Am I going to call them the night before? Depends on what my seller says, but probably not. If I have a buyer client, I would certainly call them and remind them. I mean, babysitting this all the way. It doesn't mean that we take advantage of customers. You got to be careful. We have to make sure they understand what they're doing, but we're not representing them, okay, through those lenses. All right. I think the new world is a lot better than the old world regarding unrepresented buyers. So, because we get out ahead of it. This was really fun to be a part of this discussion. You know, this is dessert for me, right?
Oh, I know. That's why I teed it up, Will. On a spoon. I just gave it to
I
you on a spoon there.
I know, I love it. All right, I love you guys. I'll see you soon.
All right, thanks, Will. So I think we probably, I think that horse is just about dead, the unrepresented buyer horse. But there is a closely related subject I'd also like to talk about, and that is maybe the transition to limited agency and whether or not that's something we actually want to push for or advocate for. But as a reminder, I actually have for those who have been around the huddle for quite some time, there is, we have a naughty list that we used to like to refer to, get a good laugh from, and hopefully also learn something about. But this is a really good reminder. This one, uh, the we're talking about, by the way, the newsletter, the real estate division newsletter, and they put out a quarterly newsletter with disciplinary actions and whatnot. And every now and again, there's some stuff that I think we should all read, get a good laugh at their expense because they deserve it. Um, but they've altered this quite a bit lately, and so they're not reporting some stuff, and they are reporting the serious stuff, which I think is pretty good. I don't think you need your name in the newsletter because you know your brokerage isn't on your website or your social media handle or whatever. Like, yeah, find them, whatever. Maybe not in the newsletter. But anyway, this one is actually closely related to the subject we're going to talk about. And I think it's worth our while. So anyway, principal broker, Ogden, Utah. That's not me, by the way. Uh, he acknowledges that an agent affiliated with him was identified in a limited agency agreement as the representative of the seller, and that he would represent the buyer of a home that was to be constructed. They executed a limited agency agreement with the seller, but Mr. So and so failed to obtain a separate written buyer agency agreement with the buyers. Although he was identified as the seller's representative, The affiliated agent communicated directly with the buyers about the material terms of the transaction and contract modifications. The buyers completed the purchase of their home, but remained uncertain as to who was acting as their agent and advocating on their behalf. Mr. Agent admits that he did not obtain a written agency agreement with the buyers that defined the scope of his representation of them. In addition, he admits that he failed to exercise active and reasonable supervision of the affiliated agent. These actions are in violated administrative rules, and Mr. Agent agreed to pay a civil penalty of $5,000 and to complete an entire 3 hours of continuing ed. So this is a really interesting scenario in which um, you might be able. I hope you can see yourself accidentally doing this, where you're the listing agent and you get somebody that comes through and you go, hey, we need a limited agency agreement in place before we can get this done, and you go get that limited agency agreement executed and you think everything's great, but what have you failed to do? You failed to get a buyer's agency agreement in place. That is step one. So don't forget that step. I know it seems like obvious, but I've seen this multiple times where we're like, hey, we just need a limited agency agreement in place because both parties are agreeing to this representation. And you're correct, they are agreeing to the representation, but you need one, a very specific one for your buyer. So don't forget that. But let's talk a minute about why and how or if we should encourage our unrepresented buyer in a scenario that we were talking about before to maybe consider becoming our client and entering into a limited agency situation. By the way, just I'm going to poll some people here, if you wouldn't mind, uh, just putting in the chat. Do you think that you should attempt to convert somebody to a limited agency situation, or if you should leave it as an unrepresented buyer? I want to talk about the pros and cons of this because, as with anything, there are benefits and there are not benefits. What say you? Sherry Kane is talking to herself. We cannot hear her, but I think she has an opinion on this.
Hmm.
What say you, Sherry?
Well, I say it depends on the first interaction with them of how I feel that I'm going to be able to. If I don't like them, I don't want to work with them. So, yeah, it just kind of depends. It depends on where they're coming from. Depends on if I feel like they're going to be fair, because I'm representing the seller first. So it just kind of depends on my feel, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. I actually think there's a lot to be said about that. I think the person and the situation dictates here, uh, and the reason I say that is because there are people in this world who can easily represent themselves who are not licensed real estate agents and have a ton of experience and they don't need it and it's not meaningful to them. There are those people. That's not a very common scenario in my experience when buying houses. So it's important that we, again, ask the questions and be curious about who they are, what their background is. Kimmy says, discuss the benefits of using a realtor and offer to refer them to one. Is that our default response to an unrepresented buyer, or is that maybe going too far? Uh, might depend on the situation. Karen says, limited agency was and is becoming a much bigger complaint problem with the DRE. Clients complain about the representation or lack thereof and file a complaint against the realtor with the division. Yeah, that's not a surprise. I think in this new world, we kind of predicted this, and surprisingly enough, our prediction seems to be coming true to some extent that we would see more limited agency and unrepresented buyer situations. Seems to be coming true, and I think our realtor community as a whole, because of our history and the way we set up the MLS, we are not used to doing limited agency deals on a regular basis. I think we're, coming, or if you're an active agent, you might come around once or twice a year. That's not really a lot of repetitions to get good at disclosure explaining the problems and the benefits and all the issues surrounding the limited agency situation. And let's face it, when things don't go well, uh, the first person that the finger is pointed at is the real estate agent, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just what happens. And it's let's just say this: even if you're really good at and experienced at being a limited agent, it's not easy. There are pitfalls. Karen also added, it's a fine line to walk. Perception of being wronged is strong, even if after investigation it's proven invalid. Still puts the agent through a lot. Very correct. I think, you know, I think if I could only pick one form in which you should read aloud to the people involved, line for line, it would be the limited agency form. And that form perfectly, in my opinion, uh, actually compared to most of the forms that we do, perfectly explains the problem because it says this is what you don't get and this is what you do get when you're entering into this scenario. And it's really easy because, 99% of the time we get to express our feelings. We get to say what the other party said to us. We get to disclose almost everything that we get from outside sources because they're our client. And when we're limited agents, we just don't get to do that. And you have to think before you speak, which is difficult for some of us. Let's just say it, it's
Mike,
difficult. Yeah. Hit it,
I'm
Alexa.
just curious, what would Karen do if she were holding her own listing open and someone came in? Would she encourage them to be unrepresented or would she try to do limited agency?
Yeah, Karen, feel free to unmute yourself or throw that in the chat.
Well, I would hesitate deeply, Alexis,
Yeah.
because even though you're being clean with your presentation of offering potentially to be a limited agent and or saying anything to an unrepresented buyer about using a realtor, believe me, there's a lot of complaints filed because realtors don't understand the verbiage they need to use, and they are then misquoted, or the potential person you're talking to is offended or whatever they want to call it by you approaching that. I would offer, if they want to have representation, I would suggest and I could recommend three agents to them and they could make their choice. But I don't think I'd want to do a limited agency because of the sensitivity around that. I know that's kind of going against what Mike's saying, but you walk a very fine line. And
Yeah.
although, like I said in my comments, oftentimes as an investigator, I would find that it was a non-issue. You're talking dragging yourself through weeks or possibly months with the way the division runs
Wow.
and how many complaints they have to sift through. And that's a lot to put yourself through
Yeah.
when you don't
Thank-
necessarily have to.
No, it's really helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
So it's a really good point, Karen. And also, I don't know if I'm expressing myself clearly or not, but I don't know that I'm definitely not a blanket advocate for limited agency. By any stretch of the word. Here's what I will say: context is everything, and so let's pose this scenario to help you think through this, whether or not you want to do it. If you are the listing agent and you meet, let's say you have a first-time home buyer and you've showed them some homes, and magically they go, "Oh, you're the listing agent over at 123 Main." Is this a scenario with a first-time home buyer that you want to be a limited agent? Probably not. I think the limitations of your client, especially them being a first-time home buyer, are too great for you to overcome as a limited agent. I don't think you should put them in the scenario, and I don't think you should put yourself in that scenario. Now, conversely, if your client is uh, highly educated, maybe they're in the real estate business to some degree or another, they've done multiple real estate transactions. Um, does that scenario feel a little better for you to risk yourself and the company to be a limited agent? Yeah, seems so. I've done a lot of limited agency transactions in my life, a lot of them. and just by the nature of the business I grew up in. And it was really easier, significantly easier for me, as most of my clients were business people. They'd done multiple real estate transactions. They were very seasoned. And so, the things that they were giving up weren't meaningful when they entered into these situations. So context is everything. And if you're wondering whether or not you should do it and you can't decide, the answer is I probably shouldn't do it. Right? The answer should be fairly obvious that yeah, we can get this done as a limited agent before you work on it. It should also be noted that there are some states that actually it's against the law to be limited agents. So think about that. It's you can do it here, but there are some places in this country where they're like, no way you're doing that. That sounds like a horrible idea. We've decided that we can do it, and but as Karen said, it's you're walking into slightly dangerous territory. Tara says, I've heard agents that refer another agents to place the offer for the unrepresented buyer and then transfer the unrepresented buyer back to the listing agent after they complete due diligence. It sounds like a good option. Um, Actually scratching my head a little bit on this one. I don't know how you would do that in the middle of the transaction. Um, Actually, one thing I don't know that we've said it. I think my opinion is that whenever we talk to an unrepresented buyer, we should probably make the recommendation that have you considered using a real estate agent? Have you even talked to one? Do you want to talk to a few people and see if it's a benefit that you want to take advantage of? Um, and I like, as with everything, I like Karen's suggestion of referring multiple agents, so we're not referring just one and they can call um, and do that homework on their own. Um, yeah, Tara, if you want to mute yourself, if you've heard this happening, I'd actually like to hear some details about how people are making this work. Does it seem workable from your couple
No,
sentences there?
I have just heard, and maybe it was more, sorry, limited agent where it goes to, so somebody else is putting in an offer maybe for your client or something, and another agent in the office places the offer, and then they go through due diligence, so you're not in a uncomfortable position.
Hmm. Okay. Um,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think, especially, yeah, if we're hearing about this secondhand, I'd like to hear from the people who are doing it, how they're executing it. Because that sounds a little tough, actually. The other thing I'd like to say is, there are instances with limited agency in which, you could see a benefit there. Like, it's not all negative. Some of the benefits would be that, I can actually pull a comp for them. I can actually, give them some direction. Um, I can actually make suggestions. But, you know, if just the words that I'm using to describe the benefits could also be used to describe that's how you're going to get yourself in trouble. So, anyway, enough on that. Anybody have any further questions or experiences on that particular issue they would like to share? All right, moving on. Let's see. I do want to talk about, one issue I did want to talk about because I dealt with it a couple weeks ago that I thought was kind of interesting. The action was under contract and they had negotiated for, after the inspection, there was a repair, electrical or a plumbing repair. And that they, in the contract, they required a licensed professional to come out and make those repairs. After they were done, our agent, sent over I think they sent over some documentation from this professional, and I think it was a plumber. The plumber sent over some documentation, and they forwarded that on to the other agent, and the other agent's comment was, "Well, I want you to go and to make sure it was done." What say you about that? If you were presented with that scenario, what say you? Is that something you should just knee jerk and of course I'm going to go make sure that got done? Or should we have a different response? Should we have a different response? Because they had a question about that, and that prompted the call to me. I don't know that maybe I overreacted to my response. I don't think I did, but maybe I did. I'll tell you what my response is. My response was too bad. Um, we are not in the business of inspecting any work or anything. And also, um, uh, we've already pre-negotiated when we check on this stuff. What did we pre-negotiate when someone can go check on the work or repairs to be made or any of that scenario? How does that work? Anybody? Anybody know what I'm referring to? Bueller? Um, the answer is the final pre-settlement walkthrough. That's what we've negotiated. It's already set in stone. That's the time, and it explicitly says to check on repairs that have been made, that the house is in substantially the same condition it was in which the day we went under contract. And the only reason I'm telling you this is because is a very odd scenario. The confidence of the other agent, even though they were wrong, prompted us to question ourselves, right? And we were like, well, why are they so confident about this? No, don't go inspect work. You have no business inspecting any work that's been done or to verify that it's been done. The way that we verify that it's been done is through paperwork. Like we're good at processing paperwork and pushing stuff back and forth, and the evidence is the invoice itself. Okay, and that they left yesterday. They left yesterday and gave me the thumbs up, and here's the bill for it. Okay, the bill's been paid or whatever. That's the evidence that it's been done. And if you want to go inspect the work, other agent, it sounds like a horrible idea because you're a real estate agent, but you can go make some verification, or your buyer can, that it's been done. So just that's just a quick reminder. Doug says, I know this is late. True question. I don't know the answer. Does having another Berkshire agent submit and negotiate your limited offer actually remove my liability? Still my name on the contract. So you're saying in this scenario that we refer an unrepresented buyer to a Berkshire agent, and because we still have to get a limited agency agreement signed because they're both under the Berkshire Hathaway Utah Properties umbrella, does that remove your liability? It removes your liability for being a limited agent because you, Doug, are not a limited agency. In some scenarios, in a lot of scenarios, Will Cooper is the limited agent and not you. So you can still perform all of your original duties that you told them you were going to do. The only person who is limited is Will Cooper. So when the problem arrives at his desk, he has to be limited as he attempts to resolve maybe a dispute or a negotiation. But we're going to pose this scenario. Doug Park and Kim Kirks are in this scenario. Kim is not limited at all, and neither is Doug, and you guys can battle it out and fight each other non-physically for a successful outcome and transaction. So,
Mike?
yeah,
The
yeah,
only
hit
thing
it.
I would add to that is probably the best form of limited agency when you have two Berkshire Hathaway agents representing one the buyer, the other representing the listing, and that way your fiduciary is kept clean, so to speak, because agency complaints were the number one, or abusive agency complaints were the number one thing that we were receiving at the division. So I like that idea of a limited agency, but when you're trying to be the limited agent individually, that gets kind of sketchy.
Yeah. And I'll add too that, many of these, because I've been involved in a lot of complaints over the years about, who did what and who did this. Very often the complaints of agency are the secondary complaint because something bad happened in the transaction. And then they go, oh, and oh, also, by the way, I have questions about my agency. Um, so, we don't plan for the best case scenario. We plan for the worst case, and that's why we're always talking about these things. So thank you, Karen, for that. All right,
Hey,
let's
Mike. Hey,
yeah,
Mike.
hit it, Doug.
I
Please
was just
do.
going to mention that there's a lot of limited agency in Park City, especially with our development work.
Mhm.
And that is what I just explained. That is Kevin's recommended method.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Norman.
Yeah, and frankly, I do like, I mean, if I could only pick one, that's my method.
And
If I could
that's
only
actually
pick one.
Kevin. I've had Kevin do that for me, and
Mhm.
Kevin submits the offer.
Yeah. There we go. And by the way, too, when you're let's just say it. A lot of people sometimes have problems with this because they're going, well, listen, I'm giving up money. Um, and, and to some degree that's true, but compensation and representation are two different subjects and they are not necessarily directly connected. Okay. So, someone can represent something and make zero money, and someone could represent something and make all the money. And there's a whole host of issues in between. Compensation and representation are two separate issues. Kim says, I do my best to take notes throughout the transaction. And in the rare case, I'm an limited agent, I take copious notes. Yeah. Um, yeah, you gotta, if you're a limited, if you enter into a situation where you're a limited agent, really good documentation. The fewer conversations you have about important subjects over the phone, the better. All the important stuff should be over emails and text messages, which are in writing, and we can prove that we, gave them the right advice and we told them about the pitfalls of their decision making and, pointed them in the right direction. And so in writing is always a really good solution to some of these issues. But yeah, I do like the solution of limited agents where we refer another agent, and just like everything, where I'm going on vacation and I'm going to have my bestie at the Saddleview office or the Bountiful office handle it while I'm gone. Your bestie can also be the person that you refer these deals to, and you have prearranged agreements on how that's handled compensation wise. Like that's a really easy solution to this problem. But it is a problem, and I'll tell you this: if you get into it, and this is the problem, and you're a limited agent, it is not a fun one to scratch yourself out of. It's a battle. It's a battle. It is 1:56. Does anybody have any other things to contribute, to add to this conversation before we sign off? All right. Well, I do have some other stuff to talk about, but you know what? I'm not going to cram it into 4 minutes. So, anyway, thanks so much for participating. Thanks so much for coming to Huddle, and I hope you have a great week. And I hope the weather is 85 degrees this weekend. Catch you later.